Are we the first two?
I think so.
Good evening, everyone. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We wanted to make sure that we allowed for everyone to enter the room. So, my name is Cicely Philpott, and I thank you so much for joining us. You will be in listen only mode for the duration of this forum. Please type questions for consideration into the chat box, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. Again, I'm Cicely J. Philpott, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and co-chair of the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter's Social Action Committee. It is my distinct honor to turn over the town hall to Presidents Ruth Price Rollins, Sandra Brinson, and Belva Denmark Tibbs for greetings and brief opening remarks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Ruth Price Rollins. I am the president of the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I'm bringing you the warmest of greetings from our chapter. Thank you for attending this very, very important forum. Based on what we saw yesterday, we all know that there is power in our voice, there is power in our vote, and we all need to vote. And we also need to be able to vote intelligently, which is why we must vote the entire ballot, including the issues and, very importantly, our judges. So I'm very happy that we are coming together to learn more about the candidates and the importance of voting for our judges. Thank you all again for attending, and I am trusting that we're all going to learn something good. Thank you.
We'll have Bacheloress Sandra Brinson.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Brinson, and I am president of Alpha Omega Chapter. I bring you greetings on behalf of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Omega Chapter. We are proud to represent tonight and honor the judges, and we are happy to be in this forum. And let the power in our voices be heard this evening, and get the message out that voting is one of the most important things that we could do. Thank you.
Okay,
President.
good evening, everyone. My name is Belva Denmark Tibbs. I'm the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Phi Omega Chapter. I am so excited to be here today because I am in a Zoom filled with phenomenal women and men. I think there are a couple of men here, but I am so excited to support all of our judges and to learn more about those who are candidates. Some people are dear friends and I haven't seen them in years. But let's get serious. African American women voted more than any other group, demographic group in 2016, and we did it again in 2018. And right now, we need to make sure that we exercise our power of voice and vote more than ever before. Now, I understand that we're going to learn a lot today, and I want us to make sure that we share it with others, especially our Black men, to make sure that they have an opportunity to make an informed vote this year. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Mitty Davis Jones, and I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Alpha Omega Chapter. I am also chairman of the Connection and Social Action Committee of our chapter. We know that there are 3 branches of government, and we know which one gets the most attention, especially after last night. A 2014 survey actually found that 63% of Ohio voters did not vote for judges because they did not know enough about the candidates. That means that 37% of voters made decisions that affect everyone. To quote Judge Ron Adrian, that's sad, because judges in Ohio are the only public officials given the authority to take people's property, their freedom, and sometimes their very lives. So this evening, we are going to give attention to that 3rd branch of government, the judicial branch, which often takes a backseat to the executive and legislative. The objectives of this forum tonight are to expand public awareness about the different judicial branches for which we cast ballots. For unlike the federal level, where a lot of attention is being given to the Supreme Court, where the positions are appointed, we in Ohio vote for all judges at all levels. That's the municipal level, county, appeals, and Supreme Court levels. So we need to know about that. We need to increase our familiarity with the persons who are holding those positions and those who are seeking those positions. Tonight, we want to inform those in attendance about the judicial races that are on the ballot on November 3rd and develop an understanding of the candidates' positions on current issues. We also want to help voters, including ourselves, to make more informed decisions about judicial races and candidates. We are so pleased that judges and candidates chose to join us tonight and that they are willing to educate the public about the positions they hold or the positions that they seek. Please enjoy your evening with us. And I now turn over to Denise Rucker Burton.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. My name is Denise Rucker Burton, and I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and co-chair of Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter's Social Action Committee. This portion of our program is designed to help increase voter familiarity with incumbent elected officials currently holding judicial seats. Each guest judge will introduce herself and give a brief explanation of the governmental level, function, and jurisdiction of the court in which she serves. And we'll start with Judge Collier Williams.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Delta Sigma Theta and Alpha Kappa Alpha for sponsoring this very timely and very important event. I am Judge Cassandra Collier Williams, and I currently serve on the Court of Common Pleas of Cuyahoga County General Division. I was initially elected in 2012 for a 6-year term that began on January 12, 2013. I was reelected in 2018. My jurisdiction is over felony cases with penalties that range anywhere from probation up to the death penalty. I also have jurisdiction over civil cases, which range anywhere from minor fender benders up to millions and millions of dollars in controversy. I am one of 4 judges that currently sit on the Common Pleas Court commercial docket, and where we deal with litigation between businesses. I am the 4th African American female judge to be elected to the Common Pleas Court General Division. And currently I am one of 4 that currently serve on the bench today. It is very important for people to understand that voting for judges is critical. It's not just, maybe you should or you could. It is critical. And it's critical because we impact all areas of your lives. If not yours personally, then maybe someone in your family, your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter. So it's very important to know who you are voting for. One of the things that we try to do, or I try to do in my court, is to invite people down often to see me at work so that you get the chance to understand and see how the judicial system works. Unfortunately, now that we're in COVID-19, that ability for people to come and just, bring the class down or come and watch the court themselves is greatly limited. The Common Pleas Bench General Division, we are beginning to work on live streaming. We don't have that now, but we are working towards that. The Supreme Court of Ohio is beginning to emphasize transparency for the judicial branch. So that also, it will become a great way for people to, the judges, see how they work, and then you get to know them a little bit better by what they do, not just what they say. It's very important that we recognize and understand that oftentimes when people may come and they're running for a position, or how do I say, you want to know what they do. So it's very important, it's very important for you to get to know them. Invite judges to events, or if there's a gathering where you have an organization and you want them to speak, because those are ways to get to know the judges. So with that, I want to again thank you for allowing us to be here, and I look forward to this great program.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Judge Torres Lugo.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be a participant today. I am Judge Jasmine Torres Lugo, Cleveland Municipal Court. We have 13 judges serving in Cleveland Municipal Court. An overview of Cleveland Municipal Court and all Cleveland municipal courts. We oversee traffic cases, driving under suspension, non-traffic cases, assault, domestic violence. I am one of the judges that serve in the specialized docket of the domestic violence. And we have civil cases up to $15,000 in damages. We have what is known as small court claims that is up to $6,000. You don't need an attorney and rules of evidence do not apply. And we serve in the preliminary hearings for felony cases as well. Cleveland Municipal Court has so many programs, specialized dockets to assist with the core issues that trigger criminal behaviors. And that is exactly why you want to elect judges that are compassionate and they are willing to provide the individuals with the necessary tools to succeed and minimize recidivism. Although we all understand that it's up to the individual to accept the assistance from the court to change their lives forever. But we will be surprised how many people are willing to change for the better when they know that someone is listening. And as it was said, as judges, if we can deprive you from your money, your property, and more importantly, your freedom, that should be a pressing incentive to get to know the judges, to vote for judges that are compassionate, that want to make a positive impact with you, believing in you, that you can make a difference, because together, we need to work together. Together, we can make a difference. And that is why you need to go out and vote, and you need to go out and meet the judges, visit the judges. You can go now virtual and look at the hearings that we are having through Zoom as well. So you know, it's not the same when they go out and tell you what they can do for you, but you need to see them working in real life. How are they improving, or are they willing to assist somebody that in paper may look bad, but wants to know what is the core issue that can make a difference, understand that, placing in the program that is needed, and make an impact, not only for that individual, for their family, for their kids, grandkids. And when we look around, we have changed the city together. So I thank you again for the invitation. Side note, today is my birthday. I may leave before 8:30, so I want to excuse myself before that, but I'll be hanging around. Thank you.
Thank you and happy birthday.
Thanks.
Next, we'll hear from Judge Michelle Early.
Good evening. I would like to thank the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for putting together such an important forum. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, the Alpha Omega chapter. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm Judge Michelle Denise Early, Judge of the Cleveland Municipal Court. The Cleveland Municipal Court, as Judge Torres Lugo, one of my colleagues, just outlined, deals with cases from minor misdemeanor traffic cases, like speeding offenses, all the way up to the initial appearance for cases like murder. And any of those cases are committed in the jurisdiction of the city of Cleveland. However, Cleveland Municipal Court is known for being the problem-solving court. The court that doesn't just look at what brings people in front of the court, but instead seeks to identify and assist with the underlying causes of what brought people before the court. We have been leaders in the creation of specialized dockets with a number of dockets that focus on the specific needs of the individuals who appear before the court. And we have some judges who will also talk about that. Judge Moore will talk about our drug court program, I believe. We also have been leaders in the bail and bond reform, creating a pretrial services department to minimize pretrial detention and to minimize the use of cash bond. I have presided over one of our dedicated domestic violence dockets since 2010 and currently preside over the high-risk domestic violence docket. For over the past 2.5, almost 3 years, I have had the privilege to serve as the administrative and presiding judge of the Cleveland Municipal Court, and it has been an honor to serve in that capacity. Again, I would like to thank the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the ladies of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for putting together such an important forum. Getting to know the judges benefits the community. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Judge Pinky Carr.
Yes, I'm actually here. Good evening. I am Judge Pinky Carr, Cleveland Municipal Court. I will not be repetitive because after all, you have just heard from two judges from Cleveland Municipal Court, but it is an honor and pleasure, and I don't want to take away time from what I believe is an important issue as to why it is important that we elect judges and that we have information about judges. I am in my 9th year as a judge for Cleveland Municipal Court, and I view Cleveland Municipal Court as the people's court. It is the court where, for most people, it's their first experience for court, even if it's just a traffic ticket. So I do not want to take time away. I too, as you can tell, am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and I'd like to thank my sisters of Delta Sigma Theta for putting together this event, along with Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And again, I don't want to take away time because we're here for a purpose, and I think that we should get to that purpose. Thank you again.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Judge Nelson Floyd.
Good evening to everyone. I am so glad that you're here, and I do likewise extend my personal thanks not only to Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, for which I am a member of the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter, as well as members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I think my mother-in-law is on the line. She is part of Alpha Omega Chapter. Again, my name is Allison Nelson Floyd, and I have served children and families in Cuyahoga County in the family law area for approximately 30 years. 10 years of that time I spent as a magistrate in domestic relations court, and for the last 20 years I have been serving as a judge at the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. In Cuyahoga County, we have 4 divisions of our common pleas court. That includes our general division, which is our adult felony division, domestic relations court or divorce court, our probate court, and lastly, but never least, our juvenile court. In our juvenile court, we are truly a family court, and it is a child-focused court. We have exclusive jurisdiction with regard to many of the issues that involve children, including juvenile delinquency cases, abuse, dependency, and neglect, juvenile traffic cases, juvenile custody cases, and child support cases where the parents are not married. As the third branch of government, a co-equal branch of government, as many of the previous judges have said, I cannot overestimate or describe for you the importance of this co-equal branch. I believe that we are one of the most, the courts provide the most direct contact with the public on a daily basis. And much as Dr. Jones had said in quoting Judge Adrian, life, lives, liberty, and property are under our jurisdiction and thoughtful interpretation. Voting is key. If you vote for the executive branch, if you vote for the legislative branch, then you must also take responsibility for voting for the judicial branch. Without your vote, we do not have diversity at the courts. We do not have the experience that comes with living and working in the community, and you will not have decisions that will reflect both the values as well as the issues that are important to the community. I think that I want to say that when it comes to voting, when I listen to the Attorney General talk about his responsibilities as it related to the Breonna Taylor investigation and the oath of office that he took and the responsibility that he has both to the Constitution as well as the laws as written on the books and in the federal system. That is what we have to work with. Those are the laws that we are to follow and to interpret and to apply to the lives of people. The only way, and while he said that, this is the thing that he didn't say, and why voting is so important. If you want to change the law, then vote. It is the legislative branch that sets forth the writing of the law for the judiciary to interpret. We are bound not to go outside of the law, but to interpret the law. If the law doesn't work, vote to change it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Judge Lauren Moore Siggers.
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited as a member of Alpha Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha to collaborate with my sisters at DST. This was a great idea and it's obviously successful. We have 126 participants. So I will just say I am one of the 13 judges that serves on the Cleveland Municipal Court. I have been there for 17 years. I am going to be on the ballot next year. And I think that my colleagues before me gave you a very good description about what we do at Cleveland Municipal Court. I will add two things. One is that we also marry people. And I spearheaded a tradition where we marry people on Valentine's Day at Tower City. So that's something we've been doing for a decade, and I'm very proud of that. So we marry people, we go out in the community, people call and say, hey, can you come marry me? We do that. We do a lot of things that people don't realize that we do, not just sitting on the bench. And the other thing is I'm very proud to say that I preside over the Greater Cleveland Drug Court, and that drug court includes participants from the surrounding suburbs. And we also get people who are charged with felonies, and the felonies get reduced to misdemeanors. And so that gives me the jurisdiction to preside over them. And we have a very successful court. We have graduated many people, and it's one of the most gratifying things that I have done. So I'm very excited to hear the rest of the program, and thank you again for the invitation.
Okay, next we'll hear from Judge Tanya Johnson-Jones.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you to the sororities for putting on this very important event. I am Tanya Jones, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving you as judge on the Cuyahoga County Domestic Relations Court. The Domestic Relations Court is the court that presides over divorce, annulment, legal separation, and domestic violence civil protection orders. I think it's vitally important that that voters understand that as judges, we bring our unique personal and professional experiences to the bench with us. So, for example, I had a background in social work prior to going to law school. So I started a program at my court, which is the first of its kind in the state of Ohio that assists families that are going through divorce that have mental health or substance abuse issues. So voters should educate themselves about judicial candidates and be mindful of our civic involvement and judicial activities after we have been elected. Thank you again, and I look forward to the forum.
Judge Strickland Saffold.
We just received a message that said that she's having difficulty signing in with video. So perhaps maybe at the end of the event, we can have her introduce herself if she's able to get in.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll hear from Judge Patricia Ann Blackman. Judge, you're on mute.
I forgot. I'll start over, and I have some of Judge Saffold's time. Again, my name is Patricia Ann Blackman. I am so proud of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for coming together to put a forum of this nature so that the citizens in our community can see the judges, can hear their names, and put faces with the names, because that is part of the problem in terms of voting for a judge. So I sit on the 8th District Court of Appeals for Cuyahoga County, which means that I hear all of the cases from the various judges and courts that you have just heard from. And we separate it into threes. I don't know if it has a baseball connotation or not. The trial court is the first level. You've heard from the trial judges. Our level of court is the Court of Appeals. You will hear from one of the candidates who is a member of our bench today. And then you have the Ohio Supreme Court, and they are the last court in the state of Ohio. Only in the state of Ohio, not all over the country, but we elect judges. And because we elect judges, it is our responsibility to know who those judges are. I went on the bench in 1991, February the 11th, 1991. I was probably the youngest judge to be on the Court of Appeals, and I could tell that by the size of the seats and how difficult it was for my feet to touch the floor. And I always tell that because I think it's humorous to know how much we have changed over this time. We have 12 judges, as I said before. We are elected, of course. And the Court of Appeals tends to not get the number of votes because when voters go from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket, the judges are there. So we've been telling people, go to the bottom of the ballot, vote for the judges, know who your judges are before you cast the vote. And if you do that, you will enhance our judiciary. When you look at the number of common pleas judges and the number of appellate judges and the number of municipal court judges, there are a lot of judges who are making decisions about the three things that Judge Nelson talked about. They're making decisions about your property, about your liberty, and about your life. And when those things are at hand, you have to be cautious. But also we have to vote because we're voting for our ancestors who died for the right to vote. I don't know if we have a choice in this. I turned 70 on August the 11th. I am no longer eligible to be on the bench. There are some really qualified individuals who are running for this position. I think people should look at who is running and vote for the individual who meets what you feel a judge should be. And as a result of that, I think all the other judges have been very, very thorough in explaining how the system works. And our court is a court of paper, and we are in remote Zoom oral arguments now. So we have oral arguments, and I know Judge Anita Lassiter Mays is going to talk a little bit about this in her platform. And so I will now rest and have you move on to those precious individuals who are candidates for elected office. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Nicole Lewis.
Thank you to our judges that came on to share their legal authority and allowing us to finally put a face to the name that we all so often hear. Good evening. My name is Nicole Lewis. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Phi Omega Chapter, and the chairman of the Connection and Social Action Committee. We will now have a special presentation from the Honorable C. Ellen Conley. Your Honor.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Now you're on mute.
How am I now?
You're good.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be with you this evening. I'm also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, although I'm not active, but certainly a pleasure to see all of my sorors here. I actually was the first Black woman judge elected in the state of Ohio in 1979. There had been 3 other Black women on the bench in Ohio before me, but they were all Republicans and they had all been appointed first. And so my election was the first time that a Black woman was just elected on her own merit. And I served on the Cleveland Municipal Court. And I actually, when I stepped down from my seat, Judge Moore was elected to my seat on the Cleveland Municipal Court. Now I also, after I left the court, I was elected to county council and became president of the first Cuyahoga County Council. But right now, among other things that I do, I am co-chair of Judge for Yourself. And Judge for Yourself is an organization that scans and makes recommendations on judicial races. And it's a conglomeration of 5 bar associations. I'm looking at my other computer so I can make sure I get everybody included. The Cleveland Metropolitan Bar, the Norman Minor Bar, the Ohio Women's Bar Association, the Asian American Bar Association, and the Criminal Defense Lawyers. And some of the candidates will maybe talk about. We had a Zoom conference this year, and we interviewed all of the candidates in contested races. There were about 80 lawyers that were on a Zoom conference from about 9 o'clock in the morning until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We interviewed everyone. We go through a rating process. I guess I am co-chair. It's another gentleman by the name of Daryl Clay. He happens to be an R, I'm a D. And we make recommendations. You can go to judgeforyourself.com and look at the recommendations made by our group. The people who scan the candidates, they are all basically practicing lawyers. So it's like if you went to a doctor, you want to find out from another doctor how good or bad the person was. And so this will give you an opportunity to make a decision based on the recommendations of other lawyers. It's judgeforyourself.com. We will have some media coverage and so hopefully some information in the newspaper, but it's one of those tools that you can use to determine who you would like to vote for.
Thank you. Now I will turn it over to Meredith Turner.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I wanted to check to see if Judge Saffold is she available now? Judge, are you there? Okay, it looks like she's still having some trouble. Okay, Judge, we're gonna try to come back to you before we end. So just to let everyone know that we probably go over time a little bit, and I think it's okay. This is a very important conversation, and we want to make sure that we allow everyone to speak and questions will be asked. And so I apologize if we go over, but just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. Thank you, Judge Connolly, for sharing important information with us about judgeforyourself.com, a very important voting tool. And thank you all for attending tonight's virtual town hall. I hope that you feel empowered with information and tools to help you become a more informed member of the voting electorate and a more knowledgeable civic engager. I have put in the chat a list of important resources, the websites to all of the different judges that we're going to have on tonight. So in your leisure, you can visit those websites and find out more about our candidates or our sitting judges. We will now move on to our main event, our highly anticipated Judicial Candidate Forum. I am Meredith Turner, member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and chair of the Social Action Committee.
I'm excited about this collaboration between two of the oldest and largest Black Greek letter sororities in the world. Tonight's co-moderators are both fierce and brilliant attorneys, as well as members of our sororities. Valisa Turner Howard, Esquire, is First Assistant Deputy Inspector General and Chief Diversity Officer at the Cuyahoga County Agency of the Inspector General. Currently, Valisa serves as immediate past president of the Norman S. Minor Bar Association, Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, member of the Ohio State Bar Association Advisory Council on Diversity Initiatives. She's a member of the Case Western Reserve University School of Law Dean's Diversity Cabinet and a proud member of the Alpha Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She obtained her BA from the University of California at Irvine and received an MA and certification in diversity management from the Cleveland State University. I know I put "the" in front of Cleveland State, but you know. She received her Juris Doctorate from the Case Western Reserve University School of Law and was awarded a 3-year Merit Scholarship and 3L Leadership Award. Valisa is married to Carrie D. Howard, Esquire. She lives in South Euclid, Ohio, and they have 4 children. Sonali Bustamante Wilson, Esquire. Sonali serves as General Counsel and Secretary to the Board of Trustees of the Cleveland State University. In addition to general oversight over legal and compliance matters, the Office of Institutional Equity and Office of Internal Audit report directly to her. She joined the university in '96 as a lecturer in the CM College of Law and became an assistant university legal counsel. She was named and continues to serve as a leader in residence at the College of Law. She's an active member of the National Association of the College and University Attorneys. She was elected to serve as Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion of the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association for an inaugural 2-year term, and she currently serves as its Diversity and Thought Leadership Committee person. Ladies.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Meredith. Good evening, and welcome to the Judicial Candidate Forum portion of our event. President Franklin D. Roosevelt said of the value of democracy and voting, "Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely." The real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is education. But I'm speaking to the choir, right? Because all of you know this. You're here, you're ready to be educated about who our judicial candidates are and where they stand on their issues. To that end, today my co-moderator and I will ask 6 judicial candidates to educate us on several topics. The candidates include Rick Bell, Judge Jennifer Bruner, Judge Emanuela Groves, Pamela Hawkins, Judge Wanda C. Jones, and Judge Anita Laster Mays. Before we get started, we'd like to provide some guidelines so that we're all on the same page and we can keep some decorum and order. First, my co-moderator and I will alternate asking questions. Second, candidates should wait until they are called on to respond and you will be unmuted. Please note, due to time restraints, some candidates will not be able to respond to every question. Finally, towards the end of the session, there will be Q&A with the audience. Please place your questions in the chat box and my co-moderator and I will read as many questions as time allows. Now, without further delay, we will begin. Sonali, please begin with the first question.
Thank you, Valisa. Good evening, everyone. I will call on each of the candidates to give us a 1-minute brief statement about their prior legal and judicial experiences. I would ask that each of you include which race you are running in, where you have served in the legal profession and greater Cleveland community, if applicable, and how that has served form philosophy. Let's start. Okay, is Rick Bell, is he with us? Okay, I'll come back. Let's see, Judge Bruner.
Good evening, and thank you so much for including me in this forum and for taking the time to organize it so well. We spend a lot of time on Zoom, and oftentimes they're not as organized and well put together as this one is. So I'm Jennifer Bruner, and I'm a judge of the 10th District Court of Appeals in Franklin County. Just like the 8th District Court of Appeals, our Court of Appeals is contained wholly within Franklin County. I served previously as Ohio's first female and unfortunately only female Secretary of State, but hopefully that will change. There's some great talent moving up. And I've served also 5 years as a common pleas court judge in Franklin County. And I started our adult felony drug court called the TIES program, which stands for Treatment is Essential to Success. When I served as Secretary of State, I was awarded the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award for my work in making sure that people's voting rights were protected in Ohio. And I have done overseas work in Serbia, Egypt, and Sri Lanka, specifically on the rule of law for the State Department through USAID. My connection with Cleveland, I spent a lot of time there when I was Secretary of State. And since I left that office, I have served, I think I served about 6 years on the board of the Center for Community Solutions. I resigned from the board in order to run for the Ohio Supreme Court. I've been married for 42 years to my husband, Rick, who's an attorney. We have 3 children who are married and 5, almost 6 grandchildren. Interestingly, my daughter married a man that she met when she was working in Bangkok. She's a jazz vocalist who's from Guinea, Africa, and Mohammed is my son-in-law and just became a citizen late last year. I'm very pleased to run for the Ohio Supreme Court to work on making sure that redistricting and reapportionment is fair. And since the death of George Floyd, I know there's work that we can do to help take some of the baked in racial discrimination that's in the criminal justice system. It's going to be a long road, but I'm anxious to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Bruner. Okay, Judge Groves.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you. Again, I'm Emanuela Groves, and I'm a Cleveland Municipal Court judge. I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta, the last line, and just so pleased and happy to be a part of that amazing sisterhood. Thank you also the AKAs who helped co-sponsor this event. I've been a Cleveland Municipal Court judge since 2001. I came to Cleveland in 1978, long time ago, to attend law school. I met my husband, Greg Groves, there. We got married in 81, and I started my career off as an assistant Cleveland police prosecutor. I was there for 2 years, and I went to Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, started as a staff attorney and rose through the ranks. And by the time I left in 1981, I was one of 4 assistant deputy directors, and I reported directly to the executive director. I was in charge of purchasing. We had 1,000 employees. All the purchasing for the housing authority I oversaw, along with the warehousing of those items, the re-examination of the tenants, and also the application process. In 1989, I was blessed to have a baby, and 1 day less than a year, I was blessed to have a second. So I joined my husband in the law practice of Groves and Groves attorneys at law, and then I became a Cleveland Municipal Court judge. I'm the mental health court judge, and I have been for the last 4 years. I'm just pleased to be able to go back to Case Western Reserve Law School as an adjunct professor. I've created continuing education programs that deal with provocative issues. You will not hear the issues that we address in your regular CLE, but we really do deal with those issues that address the challenges in our legal system and identifying where it fails when people have not been treated fairly. Because of the years of service, I write opinions, they've been published, they're used as precedent, and I've been rated excellent by all 5 bar associations and also endorsed by the Cleveland Plain. I'm a candidate for the 8th District Court of Appeals, term commencing February the 11th, 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Hawkins.
Good evening, and thank you very much for putting on this event and inviting me to participate. My name is Pamela Hawkins. I am a private attorney within Cuyahoga County. I do some work in several other counties as well. I have been a licensed attorney for 16 years. Prior to that, I was a social worker. My educational background is bachelor's degree. I have a master's in education, an MSSA from Case Western Reserve, which is a specialized social work master's. I have spent my entire career, even as an attorney, working with populations that are challenged to access services, to access justice. I believe that in running for the 8th District Court of Appeals, I bring a diverse understanding of the various populations in Cleveland and the struggles that they have accessing services, accessing the court, and helping them get to where they need to be. I believe that as a judge on the 8th District Court of Appeals, I would be fair and impartial. I would also be looking at how we can address the issues and barriers that exist for people to access appealing a decision made by a lower court. I have been involved in the community. I participate in food banks. I participate in efforts to raise funds and toys for children who are in foster care. I have done trainings of multiple professionals in the social service field, as well as foster parents, childcare providers. I have spent a great deal of time educating myself regarding the needs of the community. I have also been an assistant county prosecutor for Children and Family Services Unit for just over 4 years.
Thank you. Okay, Judge Jones.
Good evening. I would, am I on mute?
No, you.
Okay, good evening. I would like to thank you ladies for putting together this event as well. I'm so proud to see that not only these two organizations, but other organizations with Black women stepping up in this critical time period to make sure that people have information so that they can vote. I mean, it's critical, this election. I have been serving on the Common Pleas, Cuyahoga County Common Pleas General Division bench for almost 2 years. I am seeking to keep that seat. Before taking the bench, in private practice, I worked primarily in Cuyahoga County and Summit County courts. I practiced in juvenile court, domestic relations courts, probate court, the general division, and I served as a guardian ad litem, which meant that I would go into different homes and schools to interview and speak with the children who I represented. I represented both the children and their interests. I also represented incompetent adults as it related to foreclosures and delinquency, abuse, neglect, and dependency matters in juvenile court. My experience and background as a guardian ad litem in dealing with divorces and the issues like children, assets, and elderly parents, these are the issues that are most important to people. And those issues sometimes would get pretty contentious. So my experience as a lawyer in dealing with those kinds of issues certainly shaped my judicial philosophy. I believe in fairness, mutual respect, and the ability to really focus on what's important. And those are things that, those are values that I brought from my family, my private practice into the courtroom, and I believe wholeheartedly in those values.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Judge Mays.
Good evening, ladies. And I want to thank you all for hosting this event, my Greek sisters of Delta Sigma Theta and Alpha Kappa Alpha. I am Judge Anita Laster Mays, and I am a proud member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, and I'm also their National Social Action Chair. But with my legal, I am currently a judge on the Ohio 8th District Court of Appeals. I am running unopposed. But with me running unopposed, I don't want to take anyone for granted. And so that's why I participate in everything, any and everything. And as a judge on the Court of Appeals, I am in charge of our technology committee, and I'm also on our Sunshine Committee, which is something that we try to just make sure that the workers have whatever they need and just make sure that it's a good environment. But with our technology committee, I helped to get a grant so that we can have the prisoners participate in hearings, because we were making some decisions, especially around custody, that individuals would not have an opportunity to participate. But since COVID, we haven't had an opportunity to use it, but it's all set up and it's ready to go. Also, I'm as chair of the technology committee, I make sure that we had our Zoom so that we could continue to function. One of the things that I'm proud of is that our court never stopped. From day one, we heard cases on briefs, and then we started Zoom hearings. So we have never stopped hearing cases because of the cooperation and the work that we have with our staff and the other judges, and I'm proud to lead that committee. But prior to being on the Court of Appeals, I was a judge for Cleveland Municipal Court. There I was a drug court judge. I worked with mental health, and then also as the drug court judge, I was chosen by the Ohio Supreme Court on a board to write policy and procedure for the entire state of Ohio for specialized dockets. Those procedures are currently still used today for specialized dockets to be certified for the state of Ohio. And then prior to that, I was a prosecutor, a defense attorney, and I worked in the clerk's office. And so I always tell people I was uniquely qualified to be a judge. And I am a wife to Kurt Mays. He's a chef, wonderful cook. And I have 3 children and a wonderful grandson. And I always tell my children that I should have had him first. And so, and so that's all I'll say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to circle back. Is Rick Bell with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear when you called my name. It got
Oh.
so I didn't hear, so that's my fault. I'd like to say good evening, everyone, and thanks to everyone for the opportunity to speak to you, to the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, as well as Delta Sigma Theta. I feel very comfortable in a room of women, I could say. I am the 8th of 10 children. I have 7 sisters, and I have 3 daughters. My wife and I have been married since 1990, and we have raised and are still raising 4 children, of which, as I said, 3 are daughters, and none of them want to be in the practice of law. So I'm very actually happy for them. They have that medical science background. My prior legal experience has been predominantly as an assistant county prosecutor. I'm running in the race that was Michael Donnelly's seat when he became the Justice of the Supreme Court. This is an unexpired term of 2 years. As a prosecutor, I joined the office, and when I joined the office in 1990, I had been a law clerk at the Federal Public Defender's Office. And I had also worked as a law clerk for a defense attorney in town. And I truly thought I was going to be doing defense work. And I thought I'd stay in the office for 6 months. But they gave me more and more responsibilities. Stephanie Tubbs Jones promoted me 4 times. And eventually I became the community justice chief, responsible for certain reforms in the office, such as open discovery and trying to make the police do a better job in their investigations. So I've been involved in a lot of justice reform issues, stay involved in the community. I've done the 3 R's program, helping students pass the state tests in constitutional law. And I'm in charge now of the Human Trafficking Unit and belong to the Human Trafficking Collaborative to try to curb and, if we can, end human trafficking. I supervise the Elder Protection Unit, the Diversion Unit, to try to divert people out of the criminal justice system. I've been the chief for 20 years now over the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Like you see on Dateline, To Catch a Predator, our people do that work. And I've most recently been spending a lot of time on those cold case rape kits that have been on the shelves, and I supervise all of those investigations. So I've kind of had a very broad training in many things. I've helped a lot of people become judge. I'm involved in local politics. I am the Democratic nominee in this race.
Thank you very much, Elisa.
Thank you. So, in 1999, the Supreme Court of Ohio and the Ohio Bar Association constituted a commission on racial fairness that issued a report. A number of its recommendations call for the court's collection of statistical data as to race, as it relates to such things as arrest, pretrial bond decision-making, criminal sentencing patterns, and the collection and compilation of relevant data at all other stages of the criminal justice system. More recently, Ohio Supreme Court Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor has pursued an extensive agenda for strengthening the third branch of Ohio government in a number of key areas, including but not limited to racial fairness, conviction reform, and bail reform. In fact, O'Connor said data must be collected regarding sentencing to make sure certain groups of people aren't receiving stiffer sentences based on race. She also called for cameras in every courtroom and jury education and training to prevent bias. Judges must demonstrate to those who enter their courtrooms that they can expect equal treatment under the law with respect, and with the assurance that nothing but the facts of the case and the law are taken into consideration when a decision is rendered. Do you support her sentiments here? Why or why not? And we'll start with Judge Bruner first.
Thank you. I was so excited when she announced that she was doing this. In fact, on the 4th of July, she put out an amazing essay. You can read it on the Supreme Court website, where you could tell her sensitivity had been raised very greatly. I think she had finished reading the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And when I was served as Secretary of State, we created a social health index, which was a database of indicators of quality of life for people in Ohio. And so this idea and probably the easiest way I can explain this to you is, I once talked to a friend of mine who was representing as a criminal defense attorney, a defendant who was African-American, and he was facing a pretty stiff sentence for a drug offense. The prosecutor was asking for 13 years for her client. She went on her own and she researched the kind of data that we're talking about in this database. So she spent 39 hours researching what white defendants with similar crimes, with similar backgrounds and records had received. And she was able to take that data to the sentencing judge and say, Your Honor, the prosecutor is asking for 13 years, but white defendants, and here's the data, get 4 years. Well, to her credit, and to the judge's credit, he sentenced her client to 4.5 years. So with a sentencing database like this, it would promote more uniformity across the state of Ohio, and it would promote the kind of transparency that we need to begin to tackle the systemic racism that's in the criminal justice system. I like to say, if you want to manage it, you have to measure it, and if you want to measure it, you have to define it. So I very much want to be elected to help assist with this project. It's a good start.
Thank you, Judge. We'll move on to Judge Groves.
Certainly, I support the sentiment. I am a member of the National Consortium on Racial and Ethnic Fairness. It is part of the National Center for State Courts. And we deal with issues of racial disparity. Being a Cleveland Municipal Court judge, you can walk in our courtroom probably any given day and you would think that Cleveland is 100% Black. So I think it is very important, but I think that we can't just look at the issue on the judicial end in a vacuum. We really got to look at from the beginning where people stop, when the decisions are made, what charges, and then look at what the outcome is with the sentencing, and even sometimes the verdict. So I think that we do, and sometimes, and I'm also a member of the executive committee of National Bar Association Judicial Council. And one of the things during our initiation, we talk about every indoctrination that we have every year is that we have to take the blinds off of justice so that we can see the injustice. And so I think certainly we need to be more transparent, and we need to begin to look at the sentencing disparities and then begin to talk about them. So I support it 100%.
Thank you, Judge Groves. We'll move on next to Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you. This is a project that I absolutely would support as a judge. I believe that we need to look at not just how people are sentenced, but how are they charged? How are they coming into the system? I do a lot of work with juveniles, and I see the children of color that I deal with on a daily basis who are charged much higher than some of my clients who are not of color. And I believe that we need to look at the whole picture. Sentencing is one piece of it. If we're going to make this change, we need to make it across the board, and we need to look at everything without considering, actually strike that, not without considering, we need to factor everything in. We need to look at who they are, what their experience is, where they've come from, how did we get to this point? And starting with a database that manages and identifies sentencing guidelines is a place to start.
Thank you. And finally, for this question, we will end with Judge Laster Mays.
Okay, thank you. Just as Judge Groves had said, and it's not funny though, but sometimes we would look at Cleveland Municipal Court and we would talk about it and say it's just us with justice when you look out in the audience. But I definitely support it. Currently, I am working with the chiefs of police to start from there, start from the streets. And so we have a program, or not a program, we're in talks regarding racial profiling and everything, because we see it so much. And with the courts, one of the things that we do, I mean, you can look at cases and you can see when someone's been profiled, but then there's, you know, different laws on how the police reports are written. So that's why we're trying to start there, so we can start there also, but then also while we're in the courts, be fair and make sure that justice is served. And so I definitely agree with working with it. And I will say I've been profiled a number of times myself by police when I was a prosecutor. I've had people hold their purses in the elevator and things of that nature. So I know and I understand just by looking, people seeing me, they think I'm a criminal, but I'm a judge. And it's funny.
Zanali?
Thank you. Part of the commission's report also addresses bail reform. And so along these lines, do you think that bail reform is necessary? Why or why not? And if so, what are your thoughts on the most efficient way to proceed with such reform? And I'll start with Judge Jones.
All right, thank you. Yes, I do believe that bail reform is necessary. I don't think it's the starting point. I believe Judge Groves and Judge Laster Mays' point about starting with the initial point of contact is most important because the charges that a person gets in terms of the indictment, if there is an overcharging happening, then the bail is going to be based on the initial charges. So if at that point of contact, someone is charged with, let's say, a resisting arrest, when really there isn't a resisting arrest, there's no evidence to support it, then bail would be set based on that charge, and then it would later be pled down. So I do believe that bail reform is necessary. I think when someone's bail is set based on an indictment, if there's no evidence to support it, it's, God forbid they be arrested on a Friday or on a holiday weekend, that 72-hour time period could cost someone their job. It could cost their, custody of their children. And so it's important to make sure that if there is no threat to the public, that people are processed quickly so that they can continue to work and defend their cases, because they're innocent until proven guilty in a court of law.
Thank you. Mr. Bell.
Thank you. Yeah, bail reform is necessary. It's part of the, one of the bookends, if you will. It's the beginning of the bookend. You mentioned and talked about sentencing disparity, and we have to do reform there. I proposed in my campaign well over a year ago, when I first heard Justice Donnelly speak about this, that we should keep a sentencing database. It's been part of my platform that I would do that from day one, so we can determine whether or not there's any disparity, so we can bring back some confidence, some trust in the judiciary. As Dr. Biddy Jones said earlier when she first spoke, the judiciary is the most important branch of government because we have a check and a balance. But we need to check and balance ourselves with measurements, with a proper risk assessment tool for the bail reform as well. That's the second half, or the other part, the bookends, if you will. So sentencing, as well as the bail reform. One of the efforts that I began on this in 2013, 2014, was to speak with the John and Laura Arnold Foundation to determine what their risk assessment tool was. They were developing it. I developed my own in order to implement it in the prosecutor's office. It was too unusual. I asked the John and Laura Arnold Foundation to come to our Common Pleas Court so that they could describe a new risk assessment tool that I believe we should be using. The risk assessment tool that's important is a tool that would actually determine whether or not somebody has not shown up in court in the last 2 years. Rather than taking a complete look back on a person's entire criminal history, it's better to look at only the past 2 years, because we all mature, we all grow, we all become better persons. So I think it's more proper to have a risk assessment tool that only works or looks back 2 years. Of course, you have to take into consideration the violence of the crime committed. But if you have a more fair risk assessment tool that looks at a person's life more recently to determine whether they're truly a risk to not come to court, that's where we should go. And I think that's important, and that's part of my platform.
Thank you. Judge Groves.
Certainly we need bail reform. I think too, we have to have, when you make a decision as to whether or not a person should be released in the community, you have to have courage, because you are taking a risk. We don't have a crystal ball, and I think that we need to make sure that judges don't operate out of fear, but they operate with the information that's provided before them, and then they make a decision based on whether or not they should release the person. I think one of the things too is that there is pressure from the prosecutor's office. They will set an amount, and then the challenge becomes, you have that record of that dollar amount, but my position is if I'm a rubber stamp, someone is unnecessary. And so I think that we need to make sure that judges have the courage. They make the decision on what the bond should be based on the information before them, and that you have to be willing to take a risk. If you are always operating from a high level, then that does result in people being retained in jail when they should be released. And so our court was one of the first courts that began the usage of the Arnold Foundation that provides us with some information. It certainly needs to be, but at least it gives you some information so that when you make a decision on what the bond is, you can say it was. this information, because otherwise you're just pulling numbers out the air. Even when there's a recommendation, there's really no foundation. Oh, Your Honor, the prosecutor's requesting a $50,000 bond. I'm like, based on what? You know, so I think that if there is the need for reform, there are jurisdictions where you're in or out. And I think that that could be problematic because sometimes you need just a little bit of comfort to let someone out that you know that they may return. And then we also need continued improvement in our response to people with mental illness, because sometimes their behavior can be unpredictable. I'm the mental health court judge. And so we need to be mindful that we also have in place when people are exhibiting behavior that is more symptomatic of an illness, as opposed to them being put in jail, they need to be placed in a facility where their mental condition can be stabilized. If they're suffering from addiction, that they are placed where they can begin the treatment. And that is happening in other places throughout this country. So there is no question that we need reform. And I think that we are beginning to do that. And Cleveland Municipal Court is on the cutting edge.
Great, thank you. Okay, last but not least, Judge Bruner.
Thank you. Well, the first issue is the number of cash bonds that are required. For a $100,000 bond, the person has to put up $10,000. A lot of people can't find that. And as Judge Jones said earlier, you're innocent unless and until proven guilty. If you think about mass incarceration, because it is a problem and the courts can begin the work on that, a person is locked up or incarcerated, ideally either to protect someone else or to protect them from themselves. When it's pretrial, often it's to prevent them from fleeing and to ensure that their presence will be there when they face the charges that are against them. But there are so many other community-based opportunities. Back when I was working with the drug court and common pleas court in Franklin County, I tried ever so hard to work with our county commissioners in Franklin County, and unfortunately was not successful before I left the bench to run for Secretary of State. But what I wanted to do was to have a place where, as a condition of bond, a person could actually be required to go so that they could, they actually provided some of the labor there too, to get a lunch, be able to take a shower, to get readiness classes for drug treatment, and to essentially have a place to go and do something productive where they're not only helping themselves, but helping other people. I still am not going to give up on that idea. And as a member of the Ohio Supreme Court, there are a lot of programs like that I could help try to move along, especially in some of the larger counties. So thank you for the opportunity to answer the question.
Thank you. Val.
Sure. The next question is, do you believe that mass incarceration is a problem faced by the Black community? And if so, what steps would you take as a judge, or have you taken in the past, to ensure that you don't add to the problem? And we will start with Judge Laster Mays.
Thank you. Well, as an appellate court judge, we do not sentence anyone. So what my current position is that we review the sentences of other judges. And so one of the things that they have is something called consecutive sentencing. And what we do is we will look to see if the record supports consecutive sentencing, should they get all these years, or does the record support the sentence that they have? And if we determine from the facts and the record, because we can only look at what's sent over to us, that it does not support it, we all have had the courage, and I know I've had the courage, to reverse a judge's decision and to have that sentence reduced. I do think mass incarceration is a problem. I look at some of the sentences, and it's astounding. Some of the years that individuals get, and it's not even a murder. And so what we do as appellate court judges, though, we have to review the record, but we can only review what's in front of us. We can't take anything outside of the record or what was in the newspaper or anything like that when we're reviewing our cases, and then we have to make a judgment on what's before us. But you know, when I was a trial court judge, I tried to give individuals not community service, but to leave them in the community as much as possible to stay with their families and to be productive citizens. And so I think that is the goal, to try to reform individuals and not just lock people away. But mass incarceration, yes, is a problem.
Thank you, Judge Lasser-Mays. We will go on to Mr. Bell.
Yes, thank you. I do think that there's an issue. I think that, as you mentioned, is it a problem? And yes, I do believe so. You can't help but know that the Justice Center turnstiles, that most of the people that come through the Justice Center, that there's a disproportionate amount of African Americans. And you can't help but be moved by reading Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. It is full of, and completely full of, citations that would convince anybody if they take the time to read it. There's a danger that our jail can be used as a pre-detention center for credit for time served issues. And I believe that one of the things that we can do, and hopefully I can be part of this, is to make sure that we review whether or not people with mental health issues and people with drug addictions should be triaged at centers other than the centralized booking of the county jail. We need to start with the mass incarceration and deal with it, as I talked about before, with the bookends. Squeeze it. You have to squeeze it. First of all, with the bail reform issues and trying to see if you can lower bail, decrease cash bonds in order to get people back at work, back employed, so their cases don't languish in the county jail. And then you can also, at the same time, squeeze the back end at the sentencings by keeping sentencing data, again, which is something that I intend to do. This will be able to police yourself as a court, as a judge, but also be very transparent for everybody to see, to make sure that the population of the prisons actually decrease. And I believe, as one of the candidates that have already spoken addressed, that if you do this and you have a sentencing database, that you'll see this this standardization, this decrease in the amount of prison terms, and it'll certainly be fair and not as disparate as it is.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Finally, we'll end with Judge Jones.
Well, I've already taken steps in the almost 2 years that I've been on the bench. One of the things that I noticed was a high number of people that were on probation when I took over the docket, or that I put on probation, that they were violating the terms of community control supervision or probation. So one of the things that I did was I started a mentoring program, and the point of the mentoring program is to connect. In the number of people that were violating, the bulk of them were young people, and their response to interacting with probation officers, if they had a disagreement about something, their response was to just not report rather than dealing with whatever the issue was. So I connected some of the people on probation with mentors. These mentors were people that have gone through the system at some point. Some of them even served prison time, but they're now successful. One of my mentors owns a restaurant. Several of them graduated from the reentry program. And what they do is talk to their mentor on a regular basis. When an issue arises, rather than them violating their terms of probation, what they'll do is contact the mentor, and if there's a need for the court to get involved, then I will appoint counsel and set a hearing. so that the issue can be resolved before a violation, which would require me to terminate probation and send them in some cases to prison. So it's in the early stages, but it's something that I've started. I believe it's going to be very successful. And I know that it will reduce the number of people that are being sent to prison.
Thank you for that. Sonali?
Okay, thank you. Now, other than this forum, what other steps have you and your campaign taken to reach out to the African American community? And also, please provide a concrete example of why the African American community should feel comfortable in voting for you rather than your opponent, if there's an opponent in your race. And I was going to ask Judge Mays.
Okay, thank you. I do not have an opponent again, but and I always say that just because I'm Black, don't mean that you should vote for me, but it's a good reason. No. But it's because I am part of the community. I'm one of 8 children. I grew up in the city of Cleveland. My father was always involved. He was from Birmingham, and my mother was from Walker County, Alabama. And the stories that they had for me regarding what happened to them or family members down in Alabama was ingrained in me. And so they took me to the polls and they had me work and give back to the community. And so I always give back. I continue to give back even now. And that's why I'm working, and I don't have, like I said, I don't have an opponent, but I'm working to try to make things better for African Americans upon arrest. Also, I've always gone into the schools to give back because I want the children to see somebody that looks like them so that they can have some confidence, because that's what happened to me also. Sarah Harper came to our school, and I know she's a member of Delta Sigma Theta when I was a kid. And I was like, I can do that. Shirley Chisholm, my father showed me her in 1972. So now I'm telling my age. But when she was there, and I said, I can do what she's doing. And I always wanted to have or be a voice for people who I thought was the voiceless, people that may be depressed or have mental illnesses or oppressed people. And so I continued to work in the community. On my street, I was a street captain with our neighborhood association. I will walk and pass out leaflets so that they can know what's going on in the community. And even in my sorority, as the social action chair, I try to make sure that our community is educated. So I believe that people should vote for me because I want to just give them whatever knowledge that I have to try to make them a better person and be in a better position as well. And it's just not just me taking. I like to give back just to put others above me. I always tell people that what I do is, being a judge is what I do, but Anita Laster Mays is who I am. And so I'm an individual who like to help individuals and just be as humble as possible. And I'm just grounded in Christ, and that's just me, and that's why you should vote for me. And as I say, I don't have an opponent, but I believe in not just taking people for granted, and that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Judge Mays. Okay, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, yes. I'll start with the most recent things. During this COVID-19 pandemic, it's given us all an opportunity, a chance maybe to be more reflective of how we can help each other, and not just our own families by staying in our homes, but trying to help others. So The first thing that I wanted to do was to try to tailor plea arrangements to help criminal defendants get out of the county jail, so we could reduce some of the dockets in order to help those inmates so they weren't going to suffer from some COVID-19 issues. I've also donated to the Gloria Pointer School in Ghana, Africa, and volunteered to pack food bags on many Fridays, multiple times, for the NGO food bank at Mount Gilead under Pastor Nathan Nance. Due to these county budget cuts, our office was going to cut the law clerks from the Justice University, and it's a group that we work with in order to try to make sure that law clerks who are minorities, young minorities, get the opportunity to become judges and get the opportunity to become lawyers. And so I went to the county prosecutor and asked that I be allowed to continue that, even though we were not hiring any law clerks during this summer. In the past, prior to this pandemic time period, was the original stakeholder in the Fugitive Safe Surrender Program to provide safe surrender for those who had arrest warrants, and so they could receive a lower plea arrangement. As I said before, I was the supervisor of our diversion unit that Stephanie Dubs-Jones started, and I increased the parameters for acceptance into that unit. I prosecuted the stop and chase case, the shooting case of Timothy Russell and Marissa Williams, and I supported dash cam cameras and body cameras for all cars and police cars. I think that helps the community as well. I've advocated for this better risk assessment tool that I've talked about before, and I solved many of the cold case murders, including Gloria Pointer case. So I believe that I have a record over the 30 years of trying to stay involved and being in tune with the justice reforms and the community issues.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hawkins?
Thank you. I think reaching the community is incredibly important. I have spent, I'm Cuyahoga County native. I have always engaged with food bank, with outreach programs. I have been part of the 3 R's program. I believe education is important. I believe that I bring, while I myself am not a member of the African American community, I have worked with that community. I have worked within that community in various positions that I held even before I was an attorney. And I believe that reaching that community is so important because I think that they feel so unheard. And I hear that from my clients all the time. So I try to, on an individual one-on-one level, as well as in group settings, to reach people, to really hear what they're saying, to try and meet them where they are and let them know that while my experience is different than theirs, that does not mean that they cannot do the same things that I do, and trying to reach them and show them how they can get there, be supportive, help them, whatever they need to reach that goal. And I believe that as a judge, I would be working to identify how we can continue reaching that community and meeting their needs and meeting them where they are.
Thank you. Judge Groves?
Tell them to look at my record. When I came on the bench, I was determined to have an impact on the people that come before me and also to improve the administration of justice. I helped create a program called Get on Track. There's no question, and even it goes to the question of mass incarceration, that poverty and the lack of education go hand in hand with crime. Created a program requiring people that come before me to secure their GEDs. Over 600 people have secured their GEDs, and they have walked out of the court better than when they came in. I truly believe in the presumption of innocence. The more you do this, I think that we operate from a presumption of guilt and that people have to prove their innocence. You will be found not guilty, and you have been found not guilty in my courtroom because I've looked at the evidence and have made a decision that it does not support it. I don't accept a plea from someone if they say they haven't done anything. I require additional information. There have been times when pleas have been offered and they haven't clearly reviewed all the evidence. I think that when people come before me, they will know that they have been heard, that they have been treated fairly. And when they walk out, I believe that they know that the outcome, if they put the emotions aside, that the outcome was appropriate. I found the RTA fair enforcement practice unconstitutional. I had heard for the last time a young Black male tell me how he was pulled off the bus because he didn't have proof of fare. Proof of fare is not evasion. And people have a right to be left in their space and not be violated by showing that they paid. This practice was only used on the health line. There's no question, I live right at Shaker Square, that practice would not have been utilized on the green line or the blue line, but on the health line it was, and I found it unconstitutional. And the fair enforcement practice had to be changed. The Pittsburgh Gazette said, rarely does a Pittsburgher look to Cleveland for help, because they were considering utilizing the fair enforcement practice that Cleveland had used. So I believe that when a person should say, should they vote for me, be they Black or white, I would say you look at my record, the impact that I've had. I have ruled with my hand out, not with my foot on the neck. Rarely you can look at my jail numbers. If I send someone to jail, they are clearly a risk to this community. There are other means that we can hold people accountable. So if you look at my sentencing philosophy, if you look at the way that I treat people, you look at the impact that I've had on the administration of justice, I would say you should vote for me, because I believe that I'm the type of judge that I would want if I were standing before a judge.
Thank you very much. Judge Bruner?
Thank you. Equality is something that I think people look at too simplistically. If you have two people who start at the same level, you can give them the same resources, you can give them the same attention, and then they can compete that way. But if someone starts back here and someone starts back here, equality may mean boosting them up to the point where they can compete. When I was in the Secretary of State's office, as I was planning to leave the office at the end of my term, we implemented some programs where we were helping people in underserved communities actually be able to facilitate helping people in those communities to be able to vote. We put extra effort, we put extra resources, we put extra time into that, because we understood that equality means equality. And as I explained, if someone starts behind, they need extra to be able to even compete evenly with someone else. As a judge, you know, I actually was working on an opinion today where the issue of mass incarceration came up, and I want to commend the 8th District Court of Appeals for recognizing that not only does mass incarceration unequally affect people of color, but that it's actually a goal that the new sentencing laws developed in 2018 by the Ohio legislature are actually aimed at dealing with in their purposes and principles of sentencing. So it's understanding that mass incarceration exists and that it applies unevenly and more heavily to people of color, and the commitment to be able to do something about that. And public service is what I do, and I'm committed to do it for as long as I possibly can. Fortunately for me, in this term that I'm running for the Ohio Supreme Court, it would allow me to serve 2 full terms in the Ohio Supreme Court, and I hope that I would be able to work with the other justices and with the judges up and down the levels of court to really make a difference in those issues for true fairness for the people of Ohio.
Okay, thank you. And then quickly, Judge Jones, please.
One of the things that bothered me when I first took the bench was a lack of representation, a lack of African-American attorneys from the prosecutor's office, as well as from the public defender's office, and also on the bench of African-American and Latino people, especially because the people that came in, or that come in front of the judges disproportionately are made up of those populations. And I made a decision when I first took the bench to change that by creating relationships with schools and with young people so that they would hopefully feel like they have someone that they know who is a judge, and that if they have an interest in becoming lawyers, law enforcement, judges, what have you, that they can contact me and I can write recommendation letters for them. So I have a relationship with Wade Park School. When they call me whenever they need anything, they call me whenever they're having an event, whether it's family reading night, Black History night, and I show up. When schools closed down because of COVID, I purchased laptops and Chromebooks for the students who didn't have them in order to make sure that they're connected. And I feel like these kinds of partnerships they're long-term partnerships. They're not just, things that you do in the community at election time. I think it's important to have these long-term relationships, and I've cultivated them not only with Wade Park, but with other schools. Mount Elementary School, I do court in the classroom where we actually hold hearings. I've done those at Heritage Middle School, and I think these are important steps that need to be taken by all of the people in our court systems, and so that kids know that they too can have these kinds of jobs and roles in our county.
Okay, thank you. I understand that we are running over time. Dr. Jones, can we ask the judges 2 questions that we've received?
That's fine with me.
Okay, all right. Val, thank you.
Okay, so the first question from the audience is, if 2020 has proven anything, it's that technology in today's world is key. In your opinion, are the courts keeping up with the advancements in technology to benefit the judicial process for all involved? If not, what are the hindrances and how are you working to resolve them? And we will start with Judge Bruner.
My perspective is from the position of the 10th District Court of Appeals. We were already in Franklin County pretty far along with our briefs actually being loaded up into iPads and not having to use paper unless we really wanted to use paper. When we moved to teleworking right away, can you hear me? Oh, okay. When we moved to teleworking right away, part of what I did for the court was to actually develop a protocol for circulating our decisions, and we had people on staff who actually taught judges. We brought some of our judges who weren't very technologically savvy into an area of learning that they probably thought they would never achieve. One of the benefits of having to do this is that now someone who wants to watch our oral argument can tune into YouTube every week and watch that oral argument. We will be continuing to do that when we go back into the courtroom, at least for the audio portion to be able to be heard. I think the technological things that we have been forced to do, and the Supreme Court did award grants to courts all over the state to try to help them continue to serve the public. I think it's going to make us better in the long run for doing that.
Thank you. Judge Grove.
Our court has been pretty fortunate in terms of the technology and also with the grants have been provided. So my hearings are basically by Zoom. And I think that this 2020 also should require us to look at why we do things and how we do things and why. Do we need people to come in? Because it's a great inconvenience for many people. So I think that the silver lining through this pandemic is for us to look at how we can do things better, serve people and get the same result. But in terms of the technology, we have been fortunate. Of course, you have to recognize everyone doesn't have the technology to Zoom. So we do call, we use the telephones. We have the phone in our courtroom. We also have the computer, we have the laptops. And so we are reaching people, and we just need to probably teach some Zoom etiquette So we're working on that, driving the car and smoking and one person lying in the bed. So, we're making it convenient, but not too comfortable. So, but yes.
Thank you, Judge Groves. Finally, for this question, Ms. Hawkins.
Thank you. And while I am not currently a judge, I have the experience of dealing with the courts from the technology side as a attorney, and I believe that it is incredibly important that we continue with the technology that we have in place, but that we keep adding on so that if it isn't necessary for everybody to come down, that we can use a telephone conference, that we can use a Zoom conference. From the perspective of doing an oral argument, having them viewed by Zoom, having them available so people can watch them and have a better understanding of what, for instance, the Court of Appeals does, because most people are not familiar with that. Having that available and accessible to everyone, as well as making sure that our courts are allowing for as much electronic filing to, again, cut down on the paperwork that people have to come up with, and providing them with guidance via forms online so that they can fill in and file them electronically, I believe would be incredibly helpful to the general public who doesn't understand.
Thank you. Before I ask the last question, I just wanted to correct the record. I saw the notes in the chat that Judge Sarah Harper is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So our last question: what are the judges' thoughts on the importance of rehabilitation and more resources in general, gaining more support in our prison systems? And have they done any work towards making this happen? And we'll start with Mr. Bell.
Thank you. Well, rehabilitation is supposed to be the standard for when you sentence. You're supposed to give the least sentence or the least restrictive sentence possible in order to attempt to rehabilitate the offender. So one of the things that I've been pushing for is this sentencing scheme that we can actually make sure that we do just that. And I did that when I heard Justice Michael Donnelly talk about this last July, so a year and a few months ago. And I was moved by it. It was at the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, one of the lunch conferences, and I had some discussions with him because this is his former position, and I asked him how he thought that could be done. And so I believe that sentencing scheme is actually going to help, because we're going to focus more attention on giving community-controlled sanctions, what the appropriate amount is. As soon as we know what all the judges are doing, they can each monitor each other and see what the appropriate sentences are, so there's not disparity. As a college student at Kent State University, my thesis, I don't want to call it a thesis, my senior project was to be a clerk for a warden, a superintendent of the old Mansfield Reformatory, the one that you see on Shawshank Redemption, and it was eye-opening. It was eye-opening because it was called the Reformatory, but it wasn't reforming anyone. It didn't have enough programs, didn't have enough resources, it didn't have even the certificates that you could get to show that you were actually going to school at the time. So it moved me to the extent that I believe that that's what we have to attempt to do. We have to try to make sure that our prison sentences are short so people can actually succeed in their own need to rehabilitate the way that they were living their lives. And then to give them a helping hand up to get them out, and to use shock probation, what we used to call shock probation and now call judicial release, as much as possible. And I think more direct contact with those defendants, that if you have to send somebody to prison, is important. Judges should continue to have contact and try to affect their lives for the better.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Judge Jones, your thought.
So in order to rehabilitate, you have to have programming when people are incarcerated. And one of the concerns, or it's an issue that I recognize, is that when COVID shut everything down, what it also did was it stopped people who, like professors that would go into like Lorraine to teach classes and Grafton. Judge Nancy Margaret Russo does the RISE program at Grafton. Those programs all shut down. So the people who normally would receive that type of programming that goes to rehabilitation aren't able to get it. So I have actually met with a group. One of the parties is a formerly incarcerated person who brought this issue about the lack of programming that qualifies for reentry. He brought it up. And so we have been working on a plan. I've talked with a person whose church has some funding available for programming for prison outreach. And one of the things that we are working on right now is getting virtual setup within at least one of the prisons, either Lorraine or Grafton, so that the inmates are able to continue their programming virtually and add new programming that people who were formerly incarcerated can actually conduct, and that hopefully they will be able to get credit for reentry. So, you know, we have to really start thinking outside of the box and using this new way of doing things in order to provide services to people at a very low cost that we weren't able to provide before. So it's an opportunity, and I intend, if given the opportunity to complete Justice Donnelly's term, I intend to see it through.
Okay, thank you very much. We'd like to thank all of the candidates for participating this evening. Your responses have been candid, enlightening, and will aid all of us in making important decisions on Election Day. As has been noted, voting for the judicial races is critical because decisions are being made that affect the very lives of Ohio citizens and affect important issues in our communities. We hope that all in attendance will use the power in your voice and vote the entire ballot, including the judicial races, and share this important information with your family and friends. Thank you very much, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Jones.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending and for staying. This has been a very informative event today. I've learned a lot. I would like to ask if you all would remain after my comments end, because we do have some poll evaluation questions we'd like you to respond to. But we do have an election coming up. And regardless of how you choose to vote, whether by mail or in person, you now are equipped with information other than name recognition or political party, although those parties will not be on the ballot in November. They're not on the general election, or endorsements that somebody else provides. You now have some one-on-one information, face-to-face information that you can use to help make your decisions. So a 2015 survey reported that 32% of Black people believe that justice is applied equally. And given recent events, that percentage is probably even lower now. And we know that there is kind of widespread mistrust in our institutions across the board. So one way to address this belief is to elect people who have the legal knowledge and ability, the integrity and the temperament, the commitment to serve this community by applying equal treatment under the law. We urge you to go forward, share what you heard tonight, share and utilize the resources that are available, and vote on all positions and all issues in this upcoming general election. We thank you again for being here, for staying with us, and being engaged and committed citizens.